Saul's end came on a mountain called Gilboa. The Philistines had gathered an army larger than anything Saul had ever faced. They marched north, deep into Israelite territory, and assembled their forces in the Jezreel Valley, the wide, flat plain where chariots could maneuver and infantry could spread into formations that no hill tribe militia could withstand. Saul saw their camp from the ridge above, and for the first time, the Bible records something it has never said about him before. He was afraid. Not the paranoid terror that had driven him through years of chasing shadows, not the hallucinations, not the demons crawling from the walls. This was the old, simple fear of a soldier who looks down at a battlefield and knows he will not leave it. The night before the battle, Saul did something desperate. He had spent his reign banning mediums and fortune-tellers from the land, enforcing God's law against sorcery. Now, in the darkness, he disguised himself and went to a woman at Endor who could summon the dead. He asked her to bring up the spirit of Samuel. She did, and the dead prophet's words were the cruelest Saul would ever hear. "Tomorrow, you and your sons will be with me." At dawn, the Philistines attacked. The Israelites broke almost immediately. Men fell across the slopes of Gilboa as the army collapsed from the flanks inward. The Philistines drove uphill, cutting through everything in their path. Saul's 3 sons died on the mountain. Jonathan, the one who had loved David, who had defied his father to protect an innocent man, who had never stopped believing that the king he served and the friend he loved could somehow both survive. Jonathan fell with his brothers. It were the archers who found Saul. He was wounded, badly but not yet dead. He turned to his armor-bearer and gave his last command. "Draw your sword and finish me before these men come and make sport of me." The armor-bearer could not do it. He was terrified. The same belief that had stayed David's hand in the cave, the same belief that had stopped Abishai's blade in the desert. A king is God's anointed, and no man may strike him, froze the armor-bearer where he stood. So Saul did it himself. He planted the hilt of his sword in the ground and fell forward onto the blade. The armor-bearer, seeing his king dead, did the same. The Philistines found the bodies the next day. They cut off Saul's head. They stripped his armor and sent it on a tour of their cities, a trophy for their temples. Then they took the bodies of Saul and his 3 sons and fastened them to the wall of a city called Beth-shan, where they would hang in the sun for everyone to see. That should have been the end of the story. A broken king displayed like a massacred animal on an enemy's wall. The final humiliation. But then something happened that the Bible records with a tenderness that is almost unbearable. The men of Jabesh-Gilead heard what the Philistines had done. Jabesh-Gilead was a town that Saul had rescued in the very first act of his kingship, years ago, before the illness, before David, before everything fell apart. The town owed its existence to the young king who had marched through the night to save them from an enemy that was about to put out their eyes. They remembered. So they went to get him. The men of Jabesh-Gilead walked through the night. They reached Beth-shan. They took down the bodies of Saul and his sons from the wall. They carried them home. They buried them under a tamarisk tree, and they fasted for 7 days. The people Saul had saved first were the ones who saved him last. The news reached David. He was hiding among the Philistines, the one place on earth where the king couldn't follow him, when a messenger arrived and told him everything. Saul was dead. Jonathan was dead. The army was shattered. David did not celebrate. He did not claim the throne. He did not say, "Finally, the man who hunted me is gone." He tore his clothes, and he wept. and he composed a lament that the Bible preserves word for word, a poem so beautiful that the text says David ordered it taught to every man in Judah so that no one would ever forget. The beauty of Israel is slain upon your high places. How the mighty have fallen! Tell it not in Gath. Publish it not in the streets of Ashkelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice. You mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew, no rain upon you, no fields of offerings. For there the shield of the mighty was cast away, the shield of Saul. Saul and Jonathan, beloved and gracious in their lives, and in their death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. How the mighty have fallen in the midst of the battle. This is how David mourned the man who had tried to kill him for years. Not with accusations, not with relief, with a poem that calls Saul beloved, gracious, mighty, and that asks the mountains themselves to stop producing rain in grief. One more thing must be said. There are those who claim the biblical author took David's side and deliberately destroyed Saul's reputation, that the illness was invented, the madness exaggerated, the whole story designed to make David look righteous and Saul look broken. But read the text again. If the author had wanted to destroy Saul, he knew exactly how to do it. The Bible has a formula for kings it wants to condemn. It accuses them of abandoning God, of worshiping foreign idols, of committing crimes against the sacred. These charges appear dozens, maybe hundreds of times throughout the books of Kings and Chronicles. It is the standard method for delegitimizing a ruler. Not a single one of those charges is ever made against Saul. Not one. Instead, the author describes a man overcome by an illness he did not choose, in language so precise, so restrained, so filled with quiet compassion that thousands of years later we can identify every symptom he recorded and recognize that he did not invent a single detail. He described the hallucinations. He described the paranoia, the absolute conviction that everyone, including his own children, had conspired against him. He described the escalating violence, and he described the moments of clarity, the flashes where Saul suddenly sees what he has become, weeps, begs forgiveness, and then slides back into the darkness. Those moments are not the invention of a hostile writer. They are the observations of someone who watched this illness closely, understood it, and wrote about it with the care of a man who felt pity for the person suffering from it. The author loved David. That is clear, and we will see it in later episodes. But he did not need to destroy Saul to build David up. He could have made Saul a villain. Instead, he made him a tragedy. And when Saul fell on his sword on Mount Gilboa, the author gave him what he gives very few figures in the entire Bible: a death scene written with dignity, a rescue by the people who loved him most, and a lament, spoken by the very man Saul had spent years trying to destroy, that calls him the beauty of Israel. If you want to know what the biblical author truly thought of Saul, do not look at the spear, or the paranoia, or the massacre at Nob. Look at the last line of David's poem, the line that has echoed across 3,000 years and still has not stopped ringing. Oh, how the mighty have fallen!